So some people are concerned that if they request a quote, they might get pressured into buying a solar system. Do you ever recommend that solar isn't suitable for them and that they shouldn't proceed?
So, absolutely should never feel pressured. That's one key thing, and you should always think it's not just solar sales, it's any sales. If you feel pressured, that's one red flag. Absolutely, definitely. Okay. Yeah. With us, we send a quote. We generally will give a follow-up call just to make sure you receive the quote and you have any questions. After that, it's up to you to give us a call if you want to proceed or you have any more questions. But definitely no pressure. Should be felt.
So the second part of your question was, do you ever recommend to not to proceed? I think in a handful of cases we would, if there's too much shade or and it all comes down to the customer's goals. If their goals align with what we're able to facilitate, we'll recommend to proceed. But if we can't provide what they're looking for, and everybody has different goals when they set out on solar, some is economic, some is a payback period, some's environmental, some's having the greatest gear, some's to control different loads. You could go on and on and on, but really it all comes down to that person's objectives and what they're happy with. So for example, if you put a solar on a single story home with a tin roof, north-facing panels, no shade. The payback period for that return of investment, the solar would pay for itself potentially in 3 years' time. You put that same system on a shady house with 3 or 4 facets, tile, 2-story, more expensive equipment, less yield from the solar panels. Payback period might be 6 or 7 years. Customer might be incredibly green and just happy to proceed, and as long as it's transparent. I think that's the key to all of this. It's being very, very transparent. So everyone has different objectives, and our goal is to get to the bottom of that and then provide a solution to do that. And then if we can't, we'll say don't proceed.
If you give us a quote and you tell us that we're going to save X amount of dollars from our energy bill, how precise can you be with that?
So since 2018 or something like that, I've been guaranteeing the performance of my solar system in terms of production. Okay, so if I've got enough data, and I know I'm kind of speaking about myself, but it's just so easy to. So if I've got enough data, then I can tell from the data. I can give you a pretty much like spot on estimate. Yeah, like I would say in most cases, more of my customers will save more than what I would suggest on their power bill. On their proposal. Yeah, so I would say all of us could probably quite accurately give you a cost savings estimate, but the thing you've got to take into consideration is that your energy retailer controls the price of electricity, right? And your price of electricity is sold to you in many ways, which really makes it confusing for the consumer. You've got your price in terms of what you consume, and it can be control load, which is for hot water devices, for example. It can be off-peak, which is in the middle of the night. It can be shoulder, which is generally on the weekends and during the middle of the day on weekdays. And then you've got your peak periods, which is all the times the only leftover time. And you've got to balance that with your daily supply charges and all that sort of stuff. So be really accurate.
So just to clarify, you talked about data.
Yeah.
How much data do you really need? Like someone like me who's just moved to the area, I can only give you, say, one bill. Is that enough data to really do reading, or you need months of data?
You could do it easily for that month. You could say, all right, for this month of the year, you would be able to get X amount of return on whatever you're trying to claim against. But you can't just pluck numbers from thin air. No, you need data. Like an electricity bill in a conversation should be enough, because most electricity bills for someone that has been in a house for over 12 months, 95% of electricity bills have a bar chart on them, and it'll show you your seasonal usage of electricity. And any of us would be able to look at your seasonal production of solar and basically overlay that graph onto your seasonal consumption. Have a conversation with you about how you use your electricity, whether it's at night, in the day, understand a little bit about your lifestyle, and you can really get very close with your prediction.
So what Billy's saying is 100% correct, and we can calculate it quite accurately. It does come down to a lot of your self-consumption. Okay. Now, due to the small feed-in tariff at the moment, now we're getting roughly 5 to 7 cents for the feed-in tariff. That can change as well. It does come down to your self-consumption. So if you're not using much power at all during the day and it's all your night time, then it may require batteries and things like that to get your same self-consumption. Now, if you can use a lot of power during the day without a battery, you'll save significantly more than if you're using all your power at night time without a battery. So that's where it can, and that's where your savings can change as well. It comes down to power management as well.
Been told several times it's not worth it, we're too shady. I wonder if the technology, because I've heard a rumour that the technology's changed and that's not necessarily true. Also, what is the life of solar panels? Like, when do you need to, once you install them, is it 10 years later you've got to reinstall new ones?
These days, they've got a 25-year warranty, and then they have projections of degradation, so that the amount of power loss over time. And the average panel these days is probably about 90% as good as it was when it was brand new at about 25-year mark. So they've got a 25-year warranty, but it's not at the end of the warranty period you're going to take them off your roof. But I mean, I think we've all seen such rapid progression in technology over the last couple of decades. Who knows what's going to be in the future in 25 years' time? We're probably going to have solar panel windows and paneling on our floors and solar fences and crazy different technology. But at the moment, you should expect a minimum of 25 years from your panels. And if you get a quote, a lot of the times, the platforms that we use will attach information directly from the manufacturer. So we use a platform called Open Solar, and it feeds in information directly from the manufacturer. So they'll list all their specifications, docs, promo videos, warranty periods, degradation charts, all that kind of stuff. But if you're unsure, just ask the installer and they'll recommend. I think one of the other questions that we saw earlier on was what are the quality from the panels, how do we pick a panel, blah, blah, blah. The top 4 manufacturers of panels these days are making outstanding panels. They're all very, very, very high quality. So the average, Trina or Jinko or Reason solar panel, there's a lot of main brands. You'll probably see on, if you want to get a bit of a quick snapshot of good panels, if you go to Solar Quotes, you'll see Finn Peacock has a chart of panels. If you see a panel on that list, you're probably going to get a pretty damn good panel. And on your question about shade, it's sort of open to interpretation a lot of time. Different installers will be using different equipment, will have different experiences with equipment. Yes, the technology has progressed, there's optimization, there's microinverters, but they still have to work within the bounds of getting sunlight on them at some stage. And if you're in an incredibly shady place, there might be periods of the day when you get sunshine. But sometimes people will just say that the payback period on this is not really a great idea. What we've done in the experience with really shady sites, for somebody still really wants to get into the game with solar and batteries, is we might put on a battery and set it to do arbitrage. So basically you have a battery set up and you get a really good energy plan that has a great off-peak rate, and you program the battery to suck in power from off-peak times and feed that to you at peak times. And therefore you'll get a return on investment over that battery. It won't be as quick as solar because solar's giving you free power. However, you will still have backup to your essential circuits as well. So that's sometimes an option for people if they've got a really shady house, but they still want a battery.
Sorry, what did you just say you don't have solar panels, you've got some kind of battery?
Yeah, we can just put a battery on your home. If you've got a really shady house, you can put a battery on and program it to buy power at an off-peak time, like 8 cents, and serve that to you at peak times when you're paying 50 cents.
Wow.
Yeah, I'll give you my card now.
Me and I put on a good solar system, seems to be doing its job, but I now am quite jealous of many other people I encounter who have an app that gives them real-time information. And so the company was Sunboost, and the only app that I've got access to tells me what was happening yesterday. And I go to people's places and they say, oh, the toaster just turned on. Is there some generic app that I can hook up to an existing system?
Working well. Sunboost, they sometimes do a thing called substitution, where you'll talk to the sales guy, I want Trina panels and a Jinko inverter, and they rock up and pull out whatever they have on the day and you'll never know. It scares me that they don't have a good app that gives you relatively live reporting. It's pretty standard these days with most inverters. There is a program called Solar Analytics. So you can get one of us to come around and install it. They put some CT, some devices on the system to monitor the main switchboard, and you'll get very, very rich analytics, probably live, wouldn't it be? Yeah, live, and then other information well and above and beyond what you probably ever imagine. You probably want to know about solar systems and stuff like that, but that will give you that key bit of information you want is live reporting. It's a third-party thing, and you pay to install it, and then you pay a subscription model. Yeah, I think you pay something like...
Use Catch. No subscription does the same thing.
Oh, Catch
And it's cheaper.
Take them right.
Sorry to interrupt. Catch Power does exactly what he's talking about. They actually bought Solar Analytics from Solar Analytics and put it into one device. And the Catch Power thing is like slightly cheaper and doesn't have any subscription fees associated with it. And it's got additional things that it can do, like it can connect you to a VPP with Amber Electric, and it can also like control loads and stuff like that. So yeah, that'd be the way to do it.
Yeah.
Way better option. A third party. Yeah.
This is really good. Now I have a two-story home in. It's not that shady. I have cement tiles, and I want your opinion because I'm a little scared that. In one of the quotes that I got back from Solar Quotes said that you should have a whole bunch of extra tiles.
We put solar on my dad's house for his 80th, and he didn't have any spare tiles. And I got a call in the middle of the day saying, "Go to this tile recycled warehouse. Here's your dad's tile." And I just picked up 8 or so spare tiles. Yep. There are recycling places that take tiles off old buildings. You might be able to find some spare tiles there. Would you say it's essential to have spare tiles?
Yeah.
Very, very, very handy. Yeah.
Okay. Otherwise, you've got to go all the way to Doyleson, which is like an hour north of Kilcare, and you've got to send someone there in a company vehicle that's paid the entire time, and then you've got to pay $5 to $10 per tile. And look, I would say on most tiled roofs, like we would certainly have to replace at least 5, mate. Yeah.
Would you like to just talk a little bit about feed-in tariffs and what's happening with them and why?
Okay, firstly, when they started off giving feed-in tariffs, they were trying to incentivise everyone to go solar. So they're giving people 60 cents per kilowatt hour. And a lot of people back then were installing solar systems and setting them just to export at 60 cents per kilowatt hour and buying back the power from the retail at 34. You know, now it's the opposite way around. We're giving them power at 5 cents per kilowatt hour. We're buying it back at 55. This whole thing's flipped. Now, what they're trying to do is curtail some rampant exporting in the middle part of the day. So, I don't know, from like 11 till 3, they're going to charge you 1 cent per kilowatt hour for maybe 10 kilowatts of excess power, which is about 10 cents. So you might be saving 20 bucks a day by having solar, and you might be getting penalised 10 cents in the middle of the day for having exported too much for the average system. Some people might oversize excessively and they might get higher charges, and maybe it's something to maybe consider having a battery, but I wouldn't be rushing to get a battery just because you're worried about a negative feed-in tariff. There are other things that the team here are exploring, like energy trading through an OC power tracer, where you can essentially trade your excess solar rather than being penalised for it. There are programs where you get a battery, and some of the, you're on it now, Amber, where you can, I mean, I just saw tonight Joe's Amber rates. He's been getting $100 a month from Amber from his retailer. In the middle of the day, they're paying him to take the power. And then in the night time, he's trading his excess power. So there are ways around that if you do a bit of research, but probably don't be too scared of it just yet. But it is a signal of what's coming. And if you look at other markets around the world, in Europe, we're seeing negative rates and retailers having dynamic rates during the day. So I used to be the New South Wales sales manager for a company called Solar Edge, one of the premium manufacturers who makes optimized solutions. And they've developed software to use in other countries that they're using now that can dynamically trade and use AI and your equipment and knowledge of your usage patterns and the weather to trade and minimize your energy costs in that dynamic environment. So that's probably where we're going. And people are developing software to try to game it all the time. But it's just a sign of more things to come like that, and a real good reason to get a battery if it suits you for other reasons. So there's the driving factors sometimes of a battery. If you're not home during the day, you get better return on investment on a battery. Or if you had any need for backup for your essential circuits, like I live in a regional area, so anyone I speak to who's in a regional area have had floods, bushfires, trees fall on lines, that kind of stuff. So batteries are quite important. But don't let that scare you, but it's a sign of things to come, and I think probably will lead us all towards batteries in the future as they get more cost effective and as a New South Wales government battery rebate coming in November. It's probably the most poorly rolled out initiative I've ever seen from any government, and that's a pretty big call because they do some pretty incompetent things sometimes, but this is particularly bad. Their objective was to get more batteries out in the market, and what they did by announcing it in March this year or whatever, and then having it come out in November, is just stop battery sales for that whole period for a lot of people. So in their wisdom, they did exactly the opposite of what they set out to achieve.
Just to go back to your question about the feed-in tariffs, the best thing you can do to don't get stuck in the details. Like if you've got a house and you're going to be there for more than 5 years, just get solar and battery. Provided that you're not one of the 15 to 20% of the population that doesn't have the right setup for it, you can't go wrong.
Thinking, you know, do we get a battery now, or do we wait until we get our EV, which is, you know, 2 or 3 times the size of a normal house battery? You know.
Yeah, I would just get a battery and solar and wouldn't wait for that technology. I mean, when we put a 10 kilowatt hour battery on a home, we have to do a whole lot of stuff like a grid connection application. What they're scared about is that someone comes up with their Tesla car and dumps 80 kilowatt hours back on the grid at the wrong time. And that's a big issue. And there's a lot of work on in the background how they'll control this. If they're worried about, you know, a little bit of power, excess power coming out at lunchtime from a solar system, and they're trying to negatively, you know, use feed-in tariffs, what do you think they're going to feel about 80 kilowatts coming out of a number of homes in the same street? So Solar Edge developed a bi-directional DC to DC car charger that they're using in Europe at the moment. This keeps it all on the DC side of the inverter, so not on the AC side, and on the grid side, it's all on the other side of the inverter where the batteries all are. So that's probably going to have a lot more of a regulatory avenue into, you know, reality, but this could all be a long way away. And what I say to anyone who's thinking about, oh, like, should I get this battery or wait for the one that's coming out a year time, if you keep doing that, like if you did that with cars, you'd be catching the bus everywhere, wouldn't you? You know what I mean? Like,
You'd never own a car.
You'd never own a car. You'd always be looking for the better thing. So I'd say pick what you like the most now and you know, work towards the future. You know, because a lot of this stuff, like we work in the solar industry, right? So you can imagine what Google does with our algorithm. When we're scrolling, we get stuff about solar and batteries and technology all the time. I read this stuff all the time, and sometimes it's 3, 5, 10 years before it's even close to reality. I know
the cost of our solar setup, 7.8 kilowatts with incentives, plus the EV charger was $9,000. That's what I would spend on fuel in 2 years if I had a nice vehicle. So, you know, approximately, I will pay the car. The cost of not fueling the car will pay for the charger and the solar setup, not a battery, just the panels, in 2 years. So I'm already nearly a year into it, and I'm half paid off.
Sun's giving us energy, we've got the car plugged in, the house is doing what it needs to do, and any excess is going to the car, and then it's charging the car, and then we don't pay to drive anywhere. So obviously that's a sunny day. In winter it's a different scenario. So yeah, it's not a battery, but it's taking some of that excess.
So, you know, really feed-in tariffs is a bit of a furphy, because what you really got to do is to consume as much of the power that you produce from the solar panels.
Yeah. So we put all the spare into the car.
Which is exactly what you're doing. Because then you're displacing higher cost electricity, and that's the highest value and the highest.
Sorry, I've talked a bit about Solar Edge because I know the equipment so well, but their EV setup is a smart charger. So essentially what you do is you plug your car in during the day, if it's home during the day, and you set it to just put excess solar into the car. So rather than the car drawing 7 kilowatt hours at you know, shoulder rates in the middle of the day, it's just taking the excess, and then they have a little schedule that does the balance of it at off-peak times at night if it wasn't filled during the day or you went around during the day to take the excess. So really smart things like that exist already, yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly what we're doing. And so we can, you know, on a sunny day, the system will be generating 7 kilowatts, which is what the car chews.
Yeah.
But maybe we're doing our washing and cooking lunch.
Yeah.
So half of that's going to the house, and the other half's going to the car.
Perfect.
And then as soon as we stop consuming in the house, it all just flows into the car. And in 2 sunny days, and the car's charged 500 kilometres, which I don't travel in a week.
Yeah.
But we put in solar about 6 months ago. I'm an accountant, but I don't really understand the electricity system. But I have calculated that in the last 6 months we've saved about $1 a day by putting solar in, which the payback period based on that is like 100 years or something. So at this stage it's totally uneconomic.
Wow. Usually heavy users with the right size system would enjoy much larger savings.
Yeah, you're not calculating.
Unless you're using it heavily at night and not in the
All I'm
summer.
doing is looking at last year's bill and this year's bill for the same period.
Yeah, that's what I was explaining in the last.
Can I ask, can you see how much you're self-consuming, which means how much you're consuming during the day, opposed to how much you're generating from the solar system? To what you're using in the household?
I can't.
Okay, so that's what it generally comes down to a lot with your savings. Okay, because you see, if you're not using any of the power during the day or very minimal, but then using it elsewhere, or you're using a lot of power at the wrong times, it does come down to power management a lot, and how you're going to save. So having the correct data can really help you to see exactly where you're going wrong.
I need an expert to come in.
Certainly do.
Analyse usage.
With rebate.
The size of the panel. So we quoted you a 6.6 kilowatt system, and if you look on the thing, it will show you, I think,
600, 800.
Yeah, 2,337 or something like that. There's a set amount for each size, and it'll be shown on that.
So it'll actually be the size of the array times 1.382 times the amount of pending years, which is 8. And then you can work it out for yourself. There will still obviously be a broker's fee, which
You see one STC rebate for the same size panel, slightly different to somebody else's STC rebate, because it's a tradable commodity. It might fluctuate in the time that your solar system is, you're given the STC rebate estimation, and when they collect it, the rebate could change by that time. So any installer's giving you an estimation of what is, they should be very close, mind you, but one might say 37 and one might say 38, something like that.
And the rebate's determined by, not by you guys then, the rebate's absolutely separate. Did you say the size of, the size of the system?
Size of the panels.
The size of the panel. So we quoted you a 6.6 kilowatt system, and if you look on the thing, it will show you, I think,
600, 800.
Yeah, 2,337 or something like that. There's a set amount for each size, and it'll be shown on there.
There's a few people around here who've got, a few panels. Maybe they're 6 to 10 years old or something like that. And they either want someone to come and have a look at them, tell them whether or not it's running properly, or they want to think about maybe expanding.
Joe would be the best to answer this question.
Thanks, Beau. So every case is different now, and it's definitely good to have an installer come out and assess what your needs are, because it varies in different things. One, the age of the system, the performance, it comes down to your personal needs as well. I have had several people go to the house where they've wanted to add systems. Now, after doing the assessment and looking at everything, they're already exporting plenty of power out during the day. So by supplying another whole solar system or adding system will not actually benefit them. It's something like that where they might require batteries to really start seeing more significant savings. More solar panels won't necessarily lead to more savings because of the poor feed-in tariffs. And it all comes down to the more you self-consume, the better off your savings is going to be. So that's where it comes down to. Each system really needs to be assessed to whether it's going to be. Older systems never generally is a good investment to add and build to those. It's the same with you have old products, building on old products, you've still got the old product, you've just got the new parts on it. It's generally a good idea to start again. Now, whether you can leave that old system and add new panels to it and then always replace the older system when it dies. The other thing it does come down to is real estate. Now, if you've only got a certain amount of prime real estate, a newer system may give you a lot more efficient panels. Your older panels may be doing half efficiencies. So you could get a lot more power out per square metre by adding newer solar panels. So that's the other thing it comes down to. And as I said to start with, it always comes down to each individual case, and that's why it's good to assess it individually.
So is there a rule of thumb?
No.
Here's a rule of thumb for you. No, I wouldn't give a rule of thumb here. You wanted a rule of thumb?
I'd love a rule of thumb.
Look, 10 years ago, they made panels to last about 10 years.
Like
Am I right?
2 kilowatt or less get rid of
Yeah.
it.
If your panels are 10 years or older, there's a good chance that you could get a lot more yield from that real estate by putting new ones on there. And inverters, even today they make inverters with a 10-year warranty, although we well and truly expect them to last longer than that. That's the manufacturer's minimum expectation is 10 years. 10 years ago, the inverters were not as robust and well made, and they hadn't learned all the lessons. You know when you see crashing investigations and they look at the plane crash and they explore what went wrong to build a better plane? They do that with inverters all the time. They're always looking at why they're breaking, how they're functioning, and making better ones. So something that's 10 years old, generally at the end of its warranty period, it's a very good chance it might be a rule of thumb to take it off. Here's the other thing. If you've got an installer coming to add to your system and you've got an old system there that's 10 years old inverter, 10 years plus old panels, it's very, very cheap for that installer to take that system off while we're there. We've got a truck there, we've set up all the safety equipment, we've got a team of blokes, and they're generally going to be leaving with an empty truck. So we may as well clear that off there right then and there. If it's at the end of its life and you've done your proper assessment. If you leave that up there and then, a year or so later go, you know what, I think it's time to take that off, you'll pay probably 2 or 3 times the price to get someone to come out just to take that off if they're not doing another install. Would you say that's correct?
I'd say that's right.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. So the kit, the equipment is a small component of the overall cost.
Not really, it's just like, it sounds like it is because we would always say to customers, you add extra panels, it's a piece of cake, doesn't cost you that much. That's because every panel you put on the roof, you generally leave all the other equipment the same and you're getting a rebate for that panel. So the cost to add a panel might be $50 to $100 per panel if you're not already maxed out with that roof face and that inverter that's holding all those panels.
So what are the factors that influence the total cost of a system?
Oh, that's an easy one. Yeah. I mean, look, when we quote someone's house, the base pricing in lots of places I've worked at is we start with a single-story home with 2 facets, no more, on a tin roof. That's what our pricing's based on, right? So if you're a deviation from that, think that there's going to be extra time involved, and which will incur extra costs. So I'll give you some examples. A 2 or 3 story home. So we're spending more time going up and down ladders and carrying equipment up. Multiple facets. Tile. Pitch. Pitch is a big one. If the guys have to do an install where they're literally swinging on harnesses, that's really time consuming and hard work and takes a long time.
Drop heaps of screws.
Exactly. And even if you're doing, and even this, you might even think about this, but on a tin roof, we sometimes lay the panels in landscape, not portrait. So to get more on, or for leaf run, or for a number of reasons we might do landscape. And if it's a steep roof with landscape, you literally do that whole install hanging off a harness until you get something you can put your feet on. So those are some of the key ones. The height of the building, the material of the roof.
Where your inverter or your battery's located, if it's far from the main switchboard.
Extra wiring, multiple facets. Anything that's going to add a challenge. And then when you go onto a shady roof, the equipment gets more expensive to negate that.
Tell us about microinverters, optimizers, and string inverters. Simply.
MLPE is multi-level panels, so you can actually have each panel individually. Now the benefit with that is you can see each panel individually. So monitoring, deterioration of panels, things like that, you can pick up a lot easier. Control over the roof as well. Having optimized microinverters under each panel gives you full control over the roof, as opposed to the string inverter systems. Although in saying that, now individual panels, shading, string inverters have come a long way from what they used to do. Panels themselves have come a long way, so shading issues with string inverters are certainly reduced as technologies move forward.
Because with a string inverter, traditionally, if one panel is shaded, they all reduce their output.
You get reduced, that's right.
But now the new string inverters manage that a bit better.
They do manage it with PowerPoint tracking. And also panels have a lot of diodes and things like that where they can actually shut partial panels down as well, things like that. There's certainly benefits that you get from having optimizers and microinverters. Absolutely.
Right.
And that's obviously why
But
they cost increase, they cost more as well.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree. So.
I would probably say, if you were going to look at microinverters versus optimizers, if you had a shady site, here's the things that I'd be looking at. I mean, microinverters used to be considered the most premium sort of solar technology you get. But over the last couple of years, the actual size of the panels has overtaken the size of the microinverters. So your average panel is a 440 watt panel, and your average microinverter is 360 watt. So basically, by putting your panels on microinverters, you're taking 440 watt panels and making them into 360 watt panels, okay? So if you had a very, very, very shady place, and your panels were never going to get to 440 in the first place, and there's very dapper light there, then and you had a very complicated roof, microinverters would be really good. But for most of the shade, I'd use optimization. But you're right, the string inverters have come a long way. Where string inverters have improved a little bit is a lot of them now have more strings. So you know how all the panels are connected together, one shaded, they're all shaded? Well, if you just segregate them into more sections, then if you know, maybe 6 would be affected rather than all 12, if you know what I mean. So there's a few more strings there to play with sometimes, so that can give you a little bit more of an advantage. But generally, optimization would be where I could be going.
Can I add something to that?
Yeah, definitely.
And what Beau's saying is absolutely right. It does come down to a trusted installer, because the design does play a big factor in whatever you're doing. Whether it's optimizers, string inverters, if you don't design the system properly and have strings, for example, if you've got shade on half your roof and somebody installs it and wires it so each string is running through the shade, you're losing all your panels.
Yeah.
Okay, where the ideal way is you'd split the strings so half the string is in the shade, one string is in the sun. So at least half your panels are working in that time that it's affected. So it comes down to a trusted installer. Make sure you go the right way. That's what it comes down to as well.
I would also say, I work for one of the manufacturers. Make sure your installer is actually certified to use that equipment. I saw in my life as working for a manufacturer, many installers winging it with equipment. And basically they put on a battery that they're not qualified to install, and underlying that is no warranty. So basically if push comes to shove and the battery goes kaput, the manufacturing just look and go, I can see this guy installed it on that day, he's not done our basic training, which is an absolute essential requirement, and you're not even warranted for that. And I saw so many systems at Solar Edge through the support system where they're just strung incorrectly, people not knowing how to use the equipment. So not so bad with string inverters because it's pretty easy, but yeah, with more complicated equipment like optimizers or microinverters, you really want to know what you're doing and make sure your installer is qualified to use that equipment. And some of them will carry a little badge of honor, like they'll actually even say Solar Edge preferred installer. They earn that credential by everyone in that organization doing the preferred training for that manufacturer, the essential training.
Bit of a pitch, but if I was you guys, I would take action before November if you are in the market, because if you wait until November, like the other 6 million people in New South Wales, then you're going to probably pay equal to what you would without the rebate anyway.
This is on batteries, you say?
Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
But not just batteries, because like if the demand goes up above what we can service,
price will go up.
Yeah, exactly. And the hard jobs, which there are a lot of hard jobs here, will be the last on the list. And that's because as human beings, we're going to service what we can